welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story is going to sit with you differently than most of the tales we cover on this channel, because this one doesn't have a clear villain. There's no dramatic theft, no fake pregnancy scam, no girl who vanished into the Bangkok night with a foreign bloke's life savings. This is something harder to process, something more human and therefore more painful. This is about a guy who fell for a bar girl in Thailand and had to face an impossible question. What happens when she actually loves you back, but it still doesn't matter? His name is Jake. He's 28 years old, from Brisbane, Australia. Tradie by profession, electrician by trade. The kind of guy who works with his hands and doesn't say much but feels everything deeply. When I first read his email, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure it belonged on this channel. But the more I sat with it, the more I realised this might be the most important story we've told. Because it's not about avoiding red flags or spotting scams. It's about confronting the uncomfortable truth that sometimes love isn't enough when the circumstances are impossible. Before we get into Jake's story, do me a favour. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from today. Have you ever been in a situation where you cared about someone, but the relationship was doomed from the start for reasons beyond anyone's control? If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're building a community here that talks honestly about these experiences without judgment. Alright, let's get into it. Here's Jake's story, in his own words. I never planned to fall in love in Thailand. That probably sounds like every other bloke's famous last words before he makes a complete mess of his life, but it's true. When I bought that one-way ticket to Bangkok in March of 2023, I was running from something, not toward anything. My mum had died 6 months earlier. Pancreatic cancer. 3 months from diagnosis to gone. I was her primary carer at the end because Dad couldn't handle it emotionally, just shut down completely, and my older sister lives in Perth with her own family. So it was me, 26 years old, watching the woman who raised me disappear a bit more each day. After the funeral, I went back to work because that's what you do, right? You keep going. But I was a ghost on those job sites. I'd be up on a ladder, running cables through ceiling cavities, and suddenly forget what I was doing. Just stare at the wire in my hands like I'd never seen it before. My foreman pulled me aside after I nearly walked off a roof, told me I needed time off before I killed myself or someone else. I fought him on it, but deep down, I knew he was right. The thing about grief that no one tells you is how it makes you feel like you're watching your own life through a dirty window. Everything's muffled and distant. My mates would invite me out, and I'd go, drink too much, wake up in my flat with no memory of getting home, and this hollow feeling in my chest that never went away. I tried the whole rebound thing, meaningless hookups from apps, but I'd be with someone and feel more alone than if I was by myself. It was like I'd forgotten how to connect to anything real. Dad was the one who suggested Thailand, which surprised me because he's not exactly the adventurous type, but he'd done the whole Southeast Asia backpacking thing in his 20s before he met Mum. And he said sometimes you need to get far enough away from your life to remember who you are. Mum had left me about 30 grand in her will, money she'd saved from her job as a school admin, and Dad said she'd want me to use it for living, not just sticking it in a bank account. So I gave my landlord notice, packed 2 bags, and booked a flight. No return date, no plan, just away. Bangkok hit me like a physical force when I walked out of Suvarnabhumi airport. The heat, first of all, like stepping into a wet blanket that's been microwaved. But also the smell, the noise, the sheer overwhelming chaos of a city that size after growing up in Brisbane. I got a taxi to Khao San Road because that's where everyone starts, right? Checked into a hostel that smelled like stale beer and industrial cleaner, dropped my bags and walked out into the backpacker circus. For the first week, I did the tourist thing. Temples, markets, rooftop bars, where other travellers would ask where I was from, and I'd give them the 30-second version of my life before excusing myself. I'd see groups of mates laughing together and feel that hollow thing in my chest expand. I was more alone, surrounded by thousands of people in Bangkok, than I'd been in my empty flat back home. The whole trip felt like a mistake. I'd wake up hungover in my hostel bunk, check flights back to Australia, then talk myself into staying one more day. It was my mate Damo who suggested Nana Plaza. We'd worked together on a hospital build 2 years back, and he'd done the whole Thailand thing, knew the scene. He was messaging me advice about where to go, what to avoid, and when I told him I was feeling disconnected from the whole Khao San vibe, he said I should check out the nightlife areas. Not for what you're thinking, he said. Just to see a different side of Bangkok to meet people who aren't just passing through. I'm not going to pretend I didn't know what Nana Plaza was. I'd seen the YouTube videos, read the forums. I knew it was go-go bars and working girls, and the whole complicated ecosystem of Thailand's nightlife industry. But I was curious, and more importantly, I was desperately lonely in a way that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with wanting to talk to another human being who might actually listen. Nana Plaza at night is sensory overload. Neon lights reflecting in puddles, thumping bass from a dozen bars competing for attention, girls in bikinis dancing on stages behind glass windows, middle-aged white guys wandering around with that specific look of men who've stopped pretending they're good people. I felt immediately out of place, too young and too obviously uncomfortable. I walked past the main bars, the massive 3-story places packed with tourists, and found myself on Soi Cowboy, which runs parallel. Bit quieter, bit less aggressive. There was a small bar near the end of the soir. No windows, just an open front with a few high tables and a modest stage where 3 girls danced half-heartedly to Thai pop music. The sign said something in Thai. I couldn't read, and underneath in English, Lucky Star. I went in because it looked less intimidating than the alternatives. That's where I met Noi. She wasn't on stage. She was sitting at the bar on her phone, wearing jean shorts and a black tank top, looking bored out of her mind. When I sat down 2 stools away, she glanced up, registered me, and went back to her phone. No immediate sales pitch, no welcome handsome man, you buy me drink. Just a brief assessment and back to scrolling. For some reason, that made me relax a bit. The mama-san came over, a heavy-set woman with too much makeup who asked what I wanted to drink. I ordered a Chang beer and she asked if I wanted company. I must have looked confused because she gestured at Noi and said, "You like her? You buy lady drink, she sit with you." I looked at Noi, who looked back at me with an expression that said she really couldn't care less either way, and I found myself saying, "Yeah, all right." Noi came over when the mama-san delivered her drink, some bright pink thing that was probably just juice and ice, sat down next to me and said, "You look sad." Straight up, no preamble. I actually laughed, which surprised both of us. I said, "That obvious." She shrugged and said, "Everyone here is sad. That's why they come. You, me, everyone. Sad or looking for something they can't find at home." We talked for 3 hours that first night, properly talked. She asked about Australia, and I told her about Brisbane, about working construction, about meat pies and cricket, stupid mundane stuff that felt profound because someone was actually interested. I asked about her, and she told me she was from Isan, a province in the northeast I'd never heard of, that she had a 4-year-old daughter living with her grandmother in the village, that she'd been working in Bangkok for 2 years, sending money home. She didn't hide what she did for work, didn't dress it up or make excuses. She said, "I dance, I talk to customers, sometimes I go with them if they pay bar fine. It's work. It's not who I am, but it's what I do." When I asked about her daughter's father, her face did this thing where all the openness just shut down like a door closing. She said, "He's not in the picture," and I didn't push. I told her about my mum then, don't know why, maybe because she'd shared something painful and it felt like a trade. I said she'd died recently, and I didn't know how to be in the world without her. Noi reached over and put a hand on mine, not in a flirty way but in a human way, and said, "I understand, my father died when I was 12. The missing doesn't stop, but it gets different." I didn't pay her bar fine that night. I just paid for the lady drinks, tipped her, and left. But I came back the next night, and the night after that. We fell into this pattern where I'd show up around 9, buy her out of having to talk to other customers by keeping her drink topped up, and we'd just talk. She taught me basic Thai phrases that made the mamasan laugh. I showed her photos of Australia on my phone, and she zoomed in on the beaches, asking if the water was really that blue. After the 4th night, she gave me her line ID and said, "You don't need to come to bar every time. We can meet outside if you want." That's when things shifted from customer and worker to something I still don't have the right words for. We started meeting during the day. She'd finish her hotel housekeeping shift. She had a day job too. And we'd meet at Chatterchak Market, or she'd take me to street food stores in her neighbourhood, places where I was the only foreigner and everyone stared. She taught me how to eat santam without dying from the chilies. I taught her Australian slang that she'd use incorrectly, and we'd both crack up. She showed me photos of her daughter, Ploy, this tiny kid with a gap-toothed smile who looked exactly like Noi, and I could see her whole face soften when she talked about her. I want to be clear about something here because I know how this sounds. I knew what the situation was. I'm not some naive idiot who thought he'd discovered the one honest bar girl in Thailand who was different from all the others. I'd read the horror stories online, the scam warnings, the bitter expat forums full of men who'd been taken for everything they had. I knew the script. But here's the thing that messed me up. Noi never asked me for money. Not once in those first 3 weeks did she hint at needing help with anything. I offered to pay for meals, and she'd sometimes refuse, insisting we go 50-50. When I suggested paying her bar fine so she didn't have to work one night, she actually said no at first, said I didn't need to do that, she was fine. It was me who pushed it because I hated the thoughts of her having to sit with other men, smile at them the way she smiled at me. I was there for 2 months before I admitted to myself what was happening. I was falling in love with her. Real love, not transaction love, not paid girlfriend love, the kind where you think about someone first thing when you wake up and last thing before sleeping. Where their laugh becomes your favourite sound. Where you start imagining futures that include them. The voice in my head, the rational Australian tradie who'd been raised to be sensible about money and women, kept warning me. But there was another voice, quieter, that said, what if she's real? What if this is actually happening? What if, after everything, I've stumbled into something genuine in the least likely place imaginable? I extended my visa. Then I signed up for an education visa at a Thai language school, which lets you stay in the country legally for a year if you attend classes. I told myself I was just giving it time to see where it went, but really, I was already decided. I was staying. I rented a small studio apartment in On Nut, far from the tourist areas, cheap and basic but mine. And one night, sitting on my balcony watching the BTS trains rumble past, I asked Noi if she wanted to quit the bar. I said I could help support her while she looked for better work, something that made her happy. She cried, actually cried, tears running down her face in a way that felt too raw to be performance. She said, "You don't know what you're offering." I said I did. She said, "You really don't, but thank you." And then she quit, actually handed in her notice at Lucky Star, walked away from the income, and started spending nights at my place. That's when I let myself believe the impossible thing. That maybe I was different. That maybe she was different. That maybe, against all odds and warnings and statistics, we were going to be the exception to every rule. If only I'd known then what exception we'd actually turn out to be. The next 4 months were the happiest I'd been since before Mum got sick. That's not an exaggeration or romance talking. I mean genuinely, functionally happy in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I'd wake up with Noi beside me in my tiny On Nut studio. Morning light coming through the thin curtains. The sound of vendors setting up food carts below. And for the first time since the funeral, I'd feel like I was living in my life instead of watching it from the outside. Noi threw herself into finding legitimate work with the kind of determination that made me respect her even more. Within 2 weeks, she had a housekeeping job at a mid-range hotel near Asok. The pay was shit compared to what she could make at the bar, maybe 12,000 baht a month versus the 50 or 60 she could pull in on a good month with bar fines and tips, but she seemed proud of it. She'd come home exhausted, smelling like cleaning chemicals, and show me her employee ID card like it was a university degree. "Look," she'd say, "real job. Respectable. I can tell my daughter I work at hotel, not bar." We fell into a routine that felt domestic and real. I'd go to my Thai language classes in the morning, actually trying to learn because I wanted to communicate with her family properly, not just survive as a tourist. She'd do her hotel shift. We'd meet up in the afternoon and explore Bangkok like neither of us had jobs or responsibilities. She showed me her Bangkok, not the tourist version. We'd take the BTS out to random stops and just walk, end up in neighbourhoods where no one spoke English, and I practiced my terrible Thai while old ladies found it hilarious. We'd eat at street stalls that cost 30 baht a plate and tasted better than anything I'd had in the fancy restaurants on Sukhumvit. The video calls with her daughter Ploy became a regular thing, usually on weekends. Noi would get so excited before these calls, made sure the apartment was tidy in the background, like her 4-year-old would judge her housekeeping through a phone screen. Ploy would chatter away in Isan dialect that I couldn't follow even with my improving Thai, and Noi would translate, laughing. "She says you look like the Farang from her cartoon. She wants to know if you have a kangaroo." I sent a care package to the village with Australian snacks and a stuffed kangaroo toy, and the next video called Ploy held it up and called me Uncle Jake in careful English Noi had taught her. Something in my chest cracked open at that. I started sending money back to the village, not huge amounts, but enough to make a difference. Noi's grandmother needed a new roof before rainy season, maybe 20,000 baht for materials and labour. I transferred it without thinking twice. The water pump broke. Another 15,000. Ploy needed new school supplies and clothes. A few thousand here and there. It felt good, using mum's inheritance money to actually help people, instead of letting it rot in a savings account earning minimal interest. Back in Australia, that money just sat there meaning nothing. Here, it fixed roofs and bought clean water and put a kid through school. Noi never asked directly. That's important to understand. She'd mention a problem her family was having, stress clear on her face, and I'd offer to help. Sometimes she'd refuse at first, say it wasn't my responsibility, and I'd have to insist. I wanted to help. I had the money. What else was I going to spend it on? But looking back now, I can see when the pattern started. When the helpful gestures became expected. When one-time emergencies became monthly occurrences. It was so gradual I didn't notice the shift from boyfriend helping out to ATM maintaining a family system I didn't fully understand. Noi's phone was always buzzing. Always. At first she'd explained it was her family, line messages from her grandmother, who'd learned to use a smartphone just to send voice messages, asking about money for this or that. Her brother Somchai messaging about his motorcycle that was always breaking down, needing repairs. Her cousin in the next village over with medical emergencies. Someone's buffalo died and they needed money to replace it because how else do you plough fields? The roof I'd paid to fix had leaked again and needed more work. Ploy needed dental work. The grandmother needed glasses. The list never ended. I paid for all of it because what else was I going to do? Say no? Watch Noi stress herself into knots over problems I could solve by opening my banking app and transferring a few $100s. That's nothing to me, I'd tell her. Back home I'd spend that on a weekend drinking with mates and have nothing to show for it except the hangover. Here it's changing lives. She'd kiss me and say I was too good, too kind, that she didn't deserve me. I'd kiss her back and say she deserved everything. And I meant it. I really did. My mates back home started expressing concern in that careful way Australians do when they think you're being an idiot, but don't want to say it directly. Damo messaged asking how much I was spending on Noi's family. I deflected, said it was fine. I had it under control. My dad called and asked when I was coming back to work, said the company was holding my position but couldn't do it forever. I got defensive, said I was building a life here, learning a language, experiencing culture. Why couldn't he just be happy for me? He went quiet and then said, "Just be careful, mate. I know you think you've got it figured out, but these situations get complicated fast." I told him no, he wasn't like that and changed the subject. The first real crack appeared about 5 months in. I came back to the apartment early from language school because the teacher was sick and class got cancelled. Noi wasn't home. She'd said she had a shift at the hotel, so I was surprised to see her purse on the table. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't, but the purse had fallen over and stuff had spilled out. When I went to put things back, I found a second phone, not her regular iPhone with the cracked screen I'd offered to replace, but a cheap Android I'd never seen before. When she got home, I asked about it casually. No accusation in my voice. She barely looked at me, said, "Oh that's my old work phone from Lucky Star. I keep forgetting to throw it out." The explanation made sense. I let it go. But something about how quickly she'd answered, how she didn't meet my eyes, stuck with me. Then there was the thing with her brother. Somchai showed up at our apartment one afternoon needing money for his motorcycle again. Noi had told me about him, 32 years old, worked construction in Pattaya, but kept coming back to the village broke. I'd sent him money twice already through Noi for repairs. This time he wanted to meet me directly, which I thought was nice, putting a face to the name. But when he arrived and we sat down, things felt off. My Thai had gotten decent enough by then to have basic conversations, and I noticed Somchai didn't look much like Noi. Different facial structure entirely. I asked how much older he was, and he said 3 years, but Noi had told me Somchai was her older brother by 6 years, which would make him 30. The math didn't work. When I brought it up later with Noi, she got flustered, said I'd misunderstood. Her Thai was confusing. He was actually her cousin, not her brother, more like a brother. It's complicated in village families. Everyone calls each other brother and sister. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. So I did. I pushed down the inconsistency and told myself cultural differences explained everything I didn't understand. The dependence had become total by this point, though I couldn't see it clearly. I was spending about 40,000 baht a month on our life together, between rent, food, her family emergencies, and random expenses. That's roughly 1,500 Australian dollars. Not nothing, but not breaking me either. The inheritance money was slowly draining, but I had enough for another year at least, maybe 2 if I was careful. And I planned to get a job eventually, maybe teaching English or doing electrical work under the table, something to keep the money flowing. I'd stopped checking flights back to Australia, stopped responding to job offers from former employers. My whole life had narrowed to this apartment, this woman, this idea of building something real in a country I barely understood. My mates' messages became less frequent. Dad and I talked maybe once a month. Stilted conversations where he'd ask how I was and I'd say great, and we both know we weren't really communicating. Noi stopped initiating sex as much. That probably should have alarmed me more than it did, but I rationalized it. She was tired from work. We'd settled into comfortable couple territory, where it didn't need to be constant. She still held my hand in public, still kissed me goodbye every morning, still told me she loved me in that specific way she said it, mixing Thai and English. I love you, Tirak, so much. The second phone kept buzzing though. I'd hear it sometimes when she was in the shower, a different ringtone than her main phone. Once I asked about it again and she snapped at me. Actually raised her voice, which she never did. Said why was I checking on her? Didn't I trust her? I apologized immediately. I did trust her. I was just curious. She softened and said sorry. She was stressed about Ploy's school fees, and just like that, we were back to normal. Then she disappeared. It was a Tuesday in November. She left for her hotel shift in the morning, same as always, kissed me at the door, said she'd be home by 4. 4 o'clock came and went. I messaged her online, no response. Called her phone, went straight to voicemail. By 7, I was worried. By 10, I was panicking. I went to the hotel where she worked, and the receptionist, who knew me because I'd picked Noi up before, said Noi had called in sick that morning, hadn't come to work at all. I spent that night not sleeping, just staring at my phone willing it to ring. I messaged everyone I could think of, the few friends of hers I'd met, but no one knew anything or they weren't telling me. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? My girlfriend, who used to work at a go-go bar and has a complicated family situation, didn't come home. They'd laugh me out of the station. The second day was worse. I walked the neighborhood showing people her photo on my phone, asking if they'd seen her. I went back to Soi Cowboy, to Lucky Star, and the mama-san recognized me but said she hadn't heard from Noi in months since she quit. I was losing my mind. Every terrible possibility ran through my head. She'd been in an accident. She'd been kidnapped. She'd run back to the village for some emergency. She was lying dead in a ditch somewhere, and I was the only person who'd noticed she was gone. On the third day she came back. I heard the key in the lock around noon and practically tackled her when she walked through the door. Where were you? I was going out of my mind. What happened? Are you okay? She looked destroyed, like she hadn't slept in 3 days, eyes red and swollen. She walked past me to the couch and sat down heavy, head in her hands. I sat next to her and waited. After maybe 5 minutes she started talking, voice flat and exhausted. She said she needed to tell me the truth about some things and I wasn't going to like it, but she couldn't keep lying anymore. My stomach dropped. The man I'd met as her brother Somchai wasn't her brother or cousin. He was her ex-husband. Ploy's father. They'd married when Noi was 19 and he was 27, had Ploy a year later, and he'd been a decent husband at first, but then got into gambling, lost money they didn't have. Started borrowing from loan sharks. When the debts got too high, he left Noi and Ploy with his family and disappeared to Bangkok. Noi had to work at Lucky Star to pay off his debts and support their daughter. She thought he was gone for good, but he'd found her 6 months ago, right around when I met her actually. Started demanding money, said Ploy was his daughter too. And Noi owed him because she was making money off foreigners while he had nothing. She'd been paying him off secretly, that's what the second phone was for. He'd message threats, and she'd send money to make him go away. The money I thought was going to her grandmother for roofs and water pumps. Some of it was, but a lot was going to him. The past 3 days, he'd escalated. He wanted 200,000 baht, about 7,000 Australian dollars, or he was taking Ploy. He had legal rights as the father, he said. He'd go to the village, take the girl to his family up in Chiang Mai, and Noi would never see her daughter again unless she paid. He'd held Noi at his apartment for 2 days, making her call everyone she knew, trying to get the money together. She'd finally convinced him to give her a week by promising she'd get it from me. She was crying now, proper broken sobbing, saying she was sorry, she never meant for it to go this far, she did love me, But she loved her daughter more. She didn't know what else to do. She was trapped between this man and her child, and me, and she was drowning. I sat there numb. Part of me was angry at the lies, the manipulation, the money I'd sent, thinking I was helping a grandmother and a village, when really I was funding some deadbeat gambler's lifestyle. But a bigger part of me just felt sad. Desperately, achingly sad. Because I believed her when she said she loved me. I could see it in how she looked at me, how she'd been trying to protect me from this mess, how she was breaking apart from the stress of maintaining parallel realities. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. If I give you the money, will he actually go away? She looked at me, and I saw her seeing me, really seeing me for maybe the first time. She said, no. There will always be another crisis, another debt, another threat. He knows I have access to money now through you, and he'll never stop. And even if he does, there will be something else. My family, they need help all the time. Real help. I'm not lying about that, but it will never be enough. You could give me everything, and it wouldn't fix the problems because the problems are bigger than money. I already had my phone out pulling up my bank account. I had about 220,000 baht left in accessible funds from the inheritance. I transferred 200,000 to her account right there while she watched, not saying anything. She asked why, and I said because whatever else was true or wasn't, Ploy was a real kid who needed her mother. Because I'd rather lose the money than know a child got taken, because I held on to it on principle. Because maybe Noi had lied about some things, but the desperation was real, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help. We both knew it was over though. Not in that moment, but soon. The money bought her daughter's safety, but it revealed the truth we'd both been avoiding. This relationship was never going to work. Not because either of us was a bad person, but because the circumstances were impossible. I was a safety net, a resource, a solution to problems that would never stop coming. She did care about me, but she'd always care about her survival and her child's survival more. And she should. That's not wrong, that's just reality. She paid off her ex-husband, and he disappeared back to whatever hole he'd crawled out of. The crisis passed. But something fundamental had broken between us that couldn't be repaired. We tried for another month, going through the motions of being a couple, but the ease was gone. Every time her phone buzzed, I wondered if it was another emergency, another lie, another need that would drain me dry. Every time I offered to help with something, I wondered if I was helping or enabling. Every time she said I love you, I heard the silent addendum, but not enough. I'm the one who ended it officially. Told her I was going back to Australia, which was true. I'd already booked the flight. She didn't fight me on it, didn't cry or beg me to stay. She just nodded and said she understood. We'd both known it was coming. The last time I saw her was at the airport. She insisted on coming to see me off, even though I told her she didn't need to. We sat in a coffee shop before my flight, and she held my hand across the table. She said thank you for everything, for being kind to her, for helping her daughter, for loving her, even when it was complicated. She said she was sorry she couldn't be who I needed her to be. I said I was sorry I couldn't fix everything for her. I asked what she was going to do, and she said go back to Lucky Star, probably, or another bar, because the hotel job didn't pay enough, and Proy needed school fees, and the grandmother needed medicine, and life didn't stop just because one Australian guy went home. She said it matter-of-factly, no self-pity, just stating reality. I gave her another 50,000 baht before I left, everything I had left in Thai currency. She tried to refuse, but I insisted. I said it was for Ploy, for school, for whatever she needed. We both knew some of it would probably end up with the ex-husband or the family or whoever came demanding next. But I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to help while I still could. We hugged goodbye at security, and I walked away without looking back, because if I looked back I'd have stayed, and staying would have destroyed us both eventually. Here's the thing I've realised, sitting back in Brisbane, back at my old job running wires through ceiling cavities, back to my regular life like Thailand was a dream I had once. Noi wasn't running a scam. This wasn't a Bargirl con where she played me from day one, with fake emotions and a scripted hustle. She genuinely cared about me. The feelings were real. But real feelings don't solve systemic poverty. Real love doesn't overcome the fact that she's a mother in an impossible situation, and I'm a foreigner with enough money to solve short-term problems, but not enough to fix her entire life. The uncomfortable truth is there was no villain in our story. Her ex-husband was a piece of work, sure, but he was also a product of the same poverty and lack of opportunities that pushed Noi into bar work in the first place. Her family wasn't scamming me when they needed help with real medical bills and real broken water pumps. I wasn't being noble by throwing money at problems. I was trying to buy my way into being needed because I was so desperate for connection after losing my mum. We were all just people trapped in circumstances bigger than ourselves, trying to survive and maybe find a bit of happiness along the way. The tragedy wasn't that someone was lying or using someone else. The tragedy was that we genuinely cared for each other, and it still wasn't enough to bridge the gap between our worlds. I think about Noi sometimes, wonder if she's okay, if Ploy is doing well in school, if the ex-husband stayed gone. I hope she found someone who could actually build a life with her, though I suspect she's back at work doing what she needs to do to survive, because that's reality for women in her situation. I don't regret helping her. I don't even regret the money. What I regret is that I couldn't do more. And also that doing more would have destroyed me in the process. That's the impossible equation at the heart of these relationships. How much of yourself can you give to someone else's survival before there's nothing left of you? And is love real if it's fundamentally transactional, even when both people wish it wasn't? I don't have answers. I just have the memory of those 4 months when I was genuinely happy, and the knowledge that happiness was built on a foundation that could never support the weight of real life. So, yeah, that's my story. The bar girl who actually loved me back and why it didn't matter in the end. That was Jake's story, and I want to sit with it for a minute before we close out. Because this is the kind of tale that's easy to judge from the outside, but devastatingly complicated when you're living it. People will read this and say Jake was naive, that he should have seen the red flags, that he got played despite his protests otherwise. Other people will say Noi was manipulative, that she knew exactly what she was doing, stringing along a vulnerable foreigner. And here's the truth. Both takes are too simple. What Jake experienced is the collision of two desperate human needs. His need for connection and purpose after losing his mother, and Noi's need for economic survival in a system that gives women in her position very few viable options. When those needs meet, they can create something that looks and feels like love, because in many ways it is love. Just love that's tangled up with dependency and transaction in ways that make it unsustainable. The lesson here isn't, don't trust bar girls or all Thai women are scammers or any of that reductive garbage that poisons these conversations. The lesson is that relationships can't survive when the power imbalance is too extreme. When one person is fighting for survival while the other is searching for meaning. It's not anyone's fault. It's just an impossible situation that hurts everyone involved. If you're watching this and thinking about following someone to Thailand or supporting someone whose circumstances seem dire, I'm not going to tell you not to. Sometimes helping is the right thing to do. Sometimes the connection is real and worth pursuing. But go in with your eyes open about what you can actually sustain long term. Understand that solving one crisis doesn't fix the systemic issues that created it. Know the difference between helping and enabling, between love and codependency. And if you're someone who's lived this story already, whether you were in Jade's position or Noi's, I hope you can find some compassion for yourself. For the choices you made, trying to survive, or trying to connect, or trying to be good in a world that doesn't always reward goodness. These situations are messy and human and painful, and you're allowed to have complicated feelings about them. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. Have you been in a relationship where the feelings were real, but the circumstances made it impossible? How did you navigate it? And if this story resonated with you, or made you think differently about these dynamics, hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep exploring these complex human stories without judgment. Thanks for watching, Bargirl Baddies. I'll see you in the next one.